So every time I come to a session at DrupalCon, I've noticed that I get to the back and I kind of look around and it feels really full. There's actually lots of room up at the front. I'm kind of huggy though, so you may not want to get too close, but Canadians really like it when you come up to the front of the room. So if you're willing to do that, that's great. It makes it a lot more engaging for me and for you. No one's going to move. Oh, look, this guy's moving. He was already close to the front.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Burton. I'm the user experience track chair for DrupalCon Portland, the local track chair. Steve Fisher is one of our featured speakers. This is the first year we've had a user experience track at at DrupalCon. Sorry, I'm tired. So I've been able to attend most of the user experience sessions and they've been mostly packed out. So I feel like that's a really good sign for user experience world in the Drupal world. And with Karen McGrain's keynote yesterday, there's just a lot of talk about user experience. So I'm really excited. When I found out that we were going to do a user experience track, the first person I thought of was Steve Fisher. I've been following him for a long time, just on Twitter. He used to do, was it Using Blue? It was a user experience Drupal podcast a few years ago with John Alvin Wilkins. And then he busted out this responsiveprocess.com website, which is awesome and just really inspiring. So let me just tell you a little bit about Steve. So Steve is the content nerd herder and responsive design fanatic at the Republic of Quality. He leads the charge on the creative end of their projects, coordinating research, strategy, visual, interaction design, and content strategy. Steve has over 18 years experience in research, business strategy, experience strategy, visual and interaction design, and content strategy on the web. During his time, he's worked as a freelance designer and served as the director of user experience in various agency and studio settings. He's a professional member of the Graphic Design Society of Canada, served as the national VP of Web for 3 years, and beyond his extensive client work, he's taught numerous college courses, CSS, web standards, UX, creativity. I feel like we're so lucky to have Steve. He's an awesome presenter. He has presented at a million different conferences, TEDx, South by Southwest, Future of Web, How Interactive Design Conference, Web Visions, and DrupalCon. He's also a contributor to .NET Magazine. You can find him at Twitter at HelloFisher. And I'll stop talking and I'll let Steve come up here. Thank you so much for being here.
Nice, and I trip on the way up. I can't walk on my own. That was a really amazing introduction. Thank you for that. And not to make me uncomfortable, but the whole group that I worked with on Responsive Process, the Yellow Pencil crew, so I just recently departed from that company, but still in close ties with them, are sitting right here. Thanks, guys. They promised to throw things at me and heckle. I'm going to encourage all of you, you can do the same. You can try to interrupt me, but I like to talk. And this is going to be a little different for me today. A little secret about me is I never rehearse any presentation that I do, ever. I don't practice them, I just kind of go because I like to talk about the things that I know. That's the reason why you would have me here, because I'm an expert in what I'm about to say. And I am in this, but it's a little different. But first, a little bit about me. Actually, a little bit about you. I love you so much. No, really, I've been a big open source evangelist, so to speak, for years. And I had this discovery moment in my life where I was working with a business partner, and he introduced me to another piece of open source software called Joomla. Many of you have probably heard of it. I don't know if you're cursing it under your breath or something right now, but it was amazing for me to get my connection point. Actually, it was with Mambo. It was before it was Joomla. And then it forked, and I got confused, and things went from there. But I loved the whole concept behind it. I fell in love with open source. I really did. I wish that it was the future for everything. It of course comes with its complications. Sometimes it's hard to work things out. But I think that collaboration is far better than competition. right? And that's a big part of the heart of open source. And the Drupal community has given back so much to me, and it's a pleasure to be here at DrupalCon. It helped me establish parts of my career as a user experience professional, and I'm very grateful for that. So yes, I more recently have started with a partner of mine, the Republic of Quality. We are an experience design firm. Essentially, we focus in on user experience work. Let's see, here's Lynn coming up. Lynn's right there. Lynn is a very experienced researcher. And we believe in connecting the human experience, right? So we don't think about technology first. We think about people first. And I just want to prove that my site was responsive. You know, I'm legit. But there's one thing that I want you to know. Quite often I joke around, I'm awkward, I'm Canadian, I'll say things like process. You'll all say process unless you're not from here. I say it the right way because it's spelled that way. But I thought I'd take a little bit more of a serious bent on this talk. Less awkward jokes. So there's one thing you need to know. Yeah. See, that's really funny. No, I don't often share around these cards, but it's true. No, I'm Hello Fisher. You can find me on Twitter. It is where I love to be. It's one of my favorite places, period. I respond really quickly. You can find me at hellofisher.com. I like to believe that I'm kind of a web hero in a sense because I'm a user experience person. You know, we actually get to make the web a better place. I believe that what I do is altruistic. That user experience is about changing things so that people can connect with them, so that it's better. You know, it's not about making it more difficult. Sometimes that happens, right? And those are the moments where I cry myself to sleep at night, and I wish I could do something different. A lot of people have said I'm an evil genius because of this photo. I thought I would dress just like the photo. That's why, Graham. But you know, I really love what I do. I feel like it's important that you get to know a little bit about me. My wife, Shannon Fisher, is a content strategist sitting right up here at the front. She snuck into this session if there's security. Oh, it's so embarrassing. No, I think that's fine. And my daughter, Emma, is keenly interested. I walked in on her once in her room. This sounds like it's going bad. But there were Post-it notes up all over her room, and she was organizing a project for herself. I was like, aw, she's my user experience daughter. And then I also found this in the back seat of our car. Interesting reading, Emma. So I'm from Vancouver. I moved there a couple years ago. You may be familiar with, not the Vancouver that's just north of here. You gotta go a little bit further than that, about 5 hours drive. It's a beautiful city. We're surrounded by amazing mountains where you can go skiing, snowboarding. In the summer, you can go hiking. When I was moving there, and my wife and I were looking for a home, we would see beaches like this in the summer. It was warm and beautiful and sunny. We were down by the convention center, and then we moved there. Yesterday felt all too familiar here. A little cold, though. But really, I love Vancouver. It's one of the places that I just kind of dreamed of living, and I'm so thankful to be there. I cycle around everywhere with my family. That's how I go camping now. I moved there and got a very serious commuter bike, then got a little less serious, a little more fun, kept going with it. I take very dangerous photos of myself while cycling. Very dangerous photos. Sometimes I forget things. But the gray, the clouds, everything about Vancouver doesn't get me down. It's an amazing spot in Canada. Basically, I'm encouraging you to come visit me anytime. I'm actually serious about that. Send me a message on Twitter, and I'll probably respond, and we'll go out for coffee. So there's a lot of slides here. Let me get through these. Oh, it's also the first place I did Movember. Probably the last place, too. I love it so much that I created a website for it, so you can go and visit that anytime. Honestly, it will solve all your problems. It's just haveaproblem.com. But now you know a bit about me. Let's get back to work. Okay, so I'm going to quote myself. No, I'm actually quoting Karen McGrain. So yesterday, Karen's talk. How many of you were in Karen's talk? So most of you. How many of you weren't? Boo. No, Karen did a great job of talking about the future of content on the web. But one thing she said is responsive design won't fix your content problems. I don't think we'll even call it responsive design in 2-3 years. I think it'll just be a part of web design. It'll be a technique that we are using. It'll be how we think about the web. I've never been more excited about working on the web than I have in the last 3 years. I remember being in London with Ethan Marcotte at the Future of Web conference and hearing him talk about it and going, oh my God, so I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that. It just suddenly made sense. This multi-device world, this web that is fluid. But really what I want to get into here is that responsive discovery is about people and what they really need. It's not about media queries. So I kind of tricked you with the title of this in one sense, but this is going to be an amazing session, I think, for you, in that we're going to talk about some stories of discovery. So this is why it's a little bit different for me. I'm going to do some storytelling. So right now there's a blog post that I have up on the Confab website that talks about how my opinion is fact. And that's tongue-in-cheek, in that I used to go out for a run on most nights in Calgary. I haven't been running so much lately. But, and I would see into the windows of people's homes as I was running by, because it would be in the evening, and they'd be at their dinner table or whatever, and I would feel like I got to know them, right? I'm not creepy. I wasn't like sneaking up to their windows. I may have done that once or twice. And then I was out for a walk with Shannon, my wife, and we were talking about that, and I just shared how I felt like I really knew them. I could see their patterns. I understood what was going on there. What I thought about them was what was really happening. And we joked about how I felt like my opinion was fact. That joke has hung on for the last 14 years. But the truth is, I didn't know them, right? I wasn't spending time with them in their situations. I wasn't asking them questions. I was just looking at them and making judgments based on my opinion, my experience. That's not good enough, right? So I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of stories of discovery to get you into the discovery mind. I think it is as much about that as it is anything else. We'll start with puppies. Who doesn't like puppies? Come on. Usually we talk about cats at DrupalCon, but let's go with puppies. This is my puppy. Aww. No, for real. She's really cute. We just got her, she joined our family this December, right before Christmas. Her name is Sloane. Our former dog that we had was named Ferris. I don't know if you can make that connection, but Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But we thought we knew a lot about her, right? But you find out certain things. You plan for growth. This jacket was a little too big. We think about her business goals, brought her to work to see what she's like at the office, and that was a whole adventure that these guys know all about. They tell you what they really want, right? So she's desperately trying to get outside to me here. This is at my house. But then they tell you what they actually want when you let them out. She doesn't like the rain, and we live in Vancouver. The things that they're really proud of. So you can kind of see the connections here between people. She is so proud of her giant tree behind her. How they interact with their peers. The things they love to do. Yes, my dog is Captain America. The things that surprise you. So she joins me on the cycling trips now. Got a little trailer for her. But then we also have these special moments where the real dog comes out. Yeah, it's kind of like she's a terrifying witch dog in that photo. But it's one thing to plan to have a puppy and to think about that and to get the food and the kennel and all the things and to have had a puppy before. But she was different than our boxer, very different. They're both athletic dogs and all that, but she was different, much higher energy, different personality. How about a discovery lesson in real estate? This is where I live. Our building is called Manor House. We don't own the whole thing. We have one townhouse in this. It's kind of on the edge of a forest, a park, and the highway. An interesting situation. But it actually is quite peaceful, right? We love it there. It's close enough to everything. The criteria for us when we were looking for a home were it needed to be within 30 minutes cycling to the office. Accomplished that. It needed to be within a kilometer, which is less than a mile, of our daughter's school, or close enough that she could walk easily, so less than a mile. And we found that. And it's a French immersion school, so it was a little bit harder. We wanted to have some green space, and ideally a place that was convenient for my wife's work too. So we found all that. We thought this was a great place, and it is. We love living there. There were things we didn't know, though, because when you go to visit a home, When you go to buy it, you usually go like on a Sunday or something like that. There's an open house. Or maybe you arrange to go with your real estate agent, and the other real estate agent has to find a time when the tenants or whoever was there isn't there anymore. So we visited on Sunday afternoons, and it was beautiful out in that summer. But after we moved in there, we start to see a few birds show up. I hadn't heard about the commuter crows of Vancouver at this point. And we start to see a few more. These are power lines, right? And you can see those are all birds in the background. They're crows, by the way. They're not just birds, they're crows. Then the park really close to us. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's a bunch up in the trees. There are 40,000 commuter crows in Vancouver. It is insane. These are the things that we didn't ask about because we didn't know the right questions to ask. We had a discovery in real estate. I will treat real estate differently from now on. I promise all these things connect into a good storyline by the end. The child's mind. So you've met my daughter a little bit. I wish she could have been here, but we also have our dog here, so someone is watching the dog. But not our child. No, Emma, she's brilliant. I love how she starts to think about things and discover things. And this isn't the beginner's mind, but this is definitely the child's mind. So this is a message I got from her because we were planning out, she takes in the recycling at our house. So she takes in all the bottles and things like that for a recycling deposit. Right? She's got her own little business with us. But then Shannon suggested that maybe she could talk to our neighbors because some of them were just throwing out their bottles. They weren't recycling them at all. And so she went around and they came up with a business plan. Actually, she came up with a business plan that she was going to try to raise $500. 20% of it was going to go to charity. 10%, and it's an animal foundation, I think. That's what it's going towards. 10% back to the people she was getting the bottles from, and she was going to keep 70%. So that was her sales pitch to them. And none of them accepted the 10%, but they're all really excited about Emma's little business. So while I was out, and these are just the people in our complex, basically. While I was out, Emma was planning, and she thought she needed a bin for all of these things. So she sends me this message. Dad, can you get 3 big containers, Rubbermaid or recycling bins, whichever, please? I say, what for? Mom's recycling idea. 3 people said yes so far. Sounds great. And I say, cool. So will you get them? So Emma's at the gray. Not today, but yes. Why not today? You out. Sometimes she gets aggressive when she texts. You're out. This is like seconds later. Dad? I say, be more patient, please. I would like to measure their front steps and see what is best, what fits and looks good. Okay, we have a strata council, a condo council. We have to agree on these things, right? And ever since my running experience of viewing people from the outside and realizing that I didn't understand them, I don't know why it's choking me up, but it is. I thought, I need to connect with people. I need to really understand what it is they need. And so I'm so proud to be teaching this to my daughter. So we went around to each person's front door, and you'll see that each door is different. This was our setup. This is what she thought she could use. It turned out that not one of them needed a Rubbermaid container. They all were willing to contribute. They were all going to bring them to her on Saturday. She could go around and collect them. And so we did a discovery project together. She took notes on it. And it was this amazing moment. Nature. This is close to where I live. You can go swimming there. There's these falls. It's called Lynn Valley. It looks great, doesn't it? It was a hot day. We should just go in these freezing water. And then there's this sign right there. Warning, extreme dangers. It doesn't just say that, though. Do not go beyond this fence area. It's extremely hazardous and has claimed several lives. Right? You begin to see the world in a different way when you start to think about a discovery mind. Right now, the Yellow Pencil crew, and they've allowed me to join in on some of the research, are working on a project for an organization called BC Transit. They organize a lot, not all of it, but a lot of the transit for the entire province. It's a very unique situation. And they work with all these partners from different municipalities, also bus drivers and their organizations. But it's exciting to be discovering how to help people get where they're going. When you think about getting to work. So because we weren't there, we left Vancouver. We flew over the Gulf Islands and into Victoria. I don't know if you've ever been to Victoria, but it's a beautiful city. It's the capital of our province. We set up for 3 intense days of listening to their internal stakeholders. So this is me taking notes and recording, and we did this as a large group. We sketched things out. We did a bit of post-it notes type of work, although it was more listening and writing them out and collaborating on that. But then we talked further and realized we needed to actually talk to some of the people that are using transit too. So there's contextual user research. I don't think it's enough in discovery to actually just look at analytics, to talk to internal stakeholders, and not to also the external stakeholders who are the end user, the people that ultimately are going to be using this transit site. Although this is a far broader project because there's also intranet and extranet. So looking at what they're using. Right now, a lot of people are using Google Transit. This was their control center. We visited this, myself and another user experience designer at Yellow Pencil. We got to know how their bus drivers picked up pieces of paper after they swiped in a card that had to be precise to the minute, and that told them where they were going to drive and how far they were going to go and when they're back. We took it a step further and drove double-decker buses for a while. Okay, you don't have to do that in your user research, but it was enlightening and it was super fun. But to see what a bus driver has to go through, how complex it is, how every bus was actually different with its controls. Think about it next time you're on with a bus driver. They may have hopped on at a stop and be on a bus they're completely unfamiliar with, and you're all on there and ready to go. It was a little scary to drive 23 tons around, but of course, it was very insightful and fun. So, responsive discovery. I'm going to talk about a particular project that Yellow Pencil just finished up, and it was interesting because my very first project with Yellow Pencil was the City of Surrey's website, and my last official project as a staff member there was working on the City of Surrey. So this is Surrey in the Lower Mainland near Vancouver. It's the fastest growing community in British Columbia. It's a very successful city in one ways, but it rails against a reputation that at times is really unfair, right? And it's a neighbor to Vancouver. So how many of you have heard of Vancouver, British Columbia, where the Olympics were in 2010? Right, okay, I kind of sold it there. How many of you had heard of the city of Surrey that's next to Vancouver? Okay, not as many, but some of you, right? Well, I am really proud of the work that's happening there and how they are running things. So, speaking of running, and one of the people I worked closely with on the project, so our team was tight, even though it's a rather large project and big interaction and user experience and content problems. And I should say that I see very little separation between user experience and content strategists. I think what Karen was talking about yesterday is so true, that we can all participate in that, but a lot of this is us thinking in the same way about the real needs of the users. But I worked with two people hand in hand throughout most of the project, content strategist, her name is Elaine McKenzie, and a designer named James Bull. And there were other parts of our team that were involved. We had a business analyst, of course, project manager, project sponsor, but I really worked closely with Elaine and James. So Elaine wanted to get into running, and I did this all the time, and it's just something that makes me feel at peace. And we thought about doing this race together. And she saw this as just being so fun. I still haven't convinced her to do this one, though.
Raise my flag, down my clothes. It's a revolution, I suppose. We're painted red to fit right in. Whoa. I'm breaking in, shaping up, then checking.
So this is the zombie run. It's 5 kilometers, an adventure run where you're going over obstacles, and they can try to capture your flags and get penalties. It's terrifying and awesome. And it's actually not far from here, one of them that's happening, the one that I'm planning to come down to. So I told Alen that most people run this race, and instead of it being 5K, it ends up being 10K, because they're trying to avoid zombies, right? Which, is kind of awesome and fun. And Alen had been doing some running, and we decided to just go out for a 13K run, which is 8 miles, close. So this is us pre-run. She's very excited. We're running through, that's actually Alen and James, the two people I was talking about running there. Through Vancouver, it's so beautiful. move to Vancouver. We're having fun on the run, but the truth is, at the end of the run, while it was fun, you begin to realize, oh, that's hard. That's a lot further than I expected. These aren't actually photos from that run. We've totally posed for these after. But Alen got to the end of the run and just said, Steve, I gave it all I had on that. And realized that she needed to do more in order to be up on that experience. A web project is kind of like a run. You need to train for it. You need to actually have a good process of understanding how to prepare for it. You need to think about your message and how you communicate it in the right way. I took this photo at a mall close to me. We've gone green, paperless, except for the giant paper sign. Right? So their message is right, but how they're conveying it is wrong. Right? They haven't thought about their audience here. They haven't thought carefully about it. You need to think about your team. Okay? So we had a broad team for the first part of the project, a narrow team. But then there's also the broader team because we're implementing this at Yellow Pencil and really needing to do a really great job of the development and implementation to the CMS. And so we would bring in our one of our development leads early on in the process so he could hear some of the decisions being made and we could ask him questions, he could ask us questions. The truth is that doesn't always work out perfectly, but I think it's really important that we involve the right people throughout the process. But I recently wrote a blog post about this, how it's really important, and this actually came out of a discussion I had with Dave here, one of the owners of Yellow Pencil, that we need to break down silos. I believe in interdisciplinary teams. It's not always something you can accomplish within your own situation because you may be a freelancer. You may be working for a company that only has developers and project managers. But think about the situation like a Frog Design, what they do. Is anyone here from Frog? No, okay. Then I can make up anything, right? No, they actually bring in like a designer, a content strategist, a business analyst, a developer. All their teams are made up of people that do different things. Even though they may be solving just a development project or a design project, they believe they need to have those perspectives. It's the same is true when you're thinking about the team for your discovery. Blank slide. Okay. So the team is everyone, not just your company. These are some of the people that worked on Surrey. This was a recent dinner that we had, right? It isn't just about your company on the discovery. It is important that you become the broader interdisciplinary team. That if you're working with a client, you are on their team and they are on your team. Too often, I hear people talk about how they hate their client, or the client is talking about how their vendor really messed up. Those things happen. But really, we are working together, and that's what we should and need to be doing to be successful in a discovery project. Some of the things that we actually delivered in the Surrey project, and I believe are crucial, are things like a user experience vision and design principles. Now, we did this through a website, but all of the writing that happened on this, we'd create a draft, and then the whole web team from the City of Surrey and our team from Yellow Pencil at that time, we worked on that together. We wrote it together, so that we could come up with the design principles and a vision that would guide the project into the future. So we could refer back to this, knowing that we were on the right track. But it couldn't have happened very well if I had created this on my own. It would have been based on my assumptions, my opinion only, even though I may have good insight to the project. There's things like sketching. And sketching is also collaborative. I sat down in their project sponsor's office at the City of Surrey in their web trailer. That's right, it's a trailer. It's kind of awesome. Their team responsible for technology is in a portable trailer. And that's partly because they were moving, but we sketched these out together. So I would draw something, I would talk about the priorities. What is priority 1, what is priority 2 here, and we would sketch out things. Now, I don't believe that, it's prudent to produce, thousands of sketches like this, but it really does get ideas out quickly. We work together. Weird, eh? Okay, failed joke. Canadian content. Sometimes sitting together doesn't always mean working together, right? And it doesn't mean that that's everyone you're working with. This is the pod that I was sitting at the Vancouver office for Yellow Pencil. That's actually Alen and James in the far, and this is Graham here. But clearly we have our headphones on, we're focused on other tasks. right? And location is nice, but it can't be the whole picture, because how many of you work in the same office as all your clients? Okay, someone actually put up their hand. That's awesome. But unless you're an in-house designer, you probably don't, or in-house developer or anything like that. And the truth is, you need to be able to collaborate across things like Google Hangouts, phone calls. You need to be able to be on site when you can, but to be just as good at communication when you're not. The truth is, when you are connected, it doesn't matter if you're there or not, you get to see moments that happen. I don't exactly remember what was happening here, but because I was part of that team there, I could see things happening. You get to be part of the decision-making when you are part of the team, and you think about yourselves as a team. Lots of finger counting there. But be careful to watch your back. This is my workstation. I became a brony at some point when I was off-site. But I spent a day a week at the City of Surrey working at a desk, not because I needed to be there from we were talking or meeting, but because I knew it was important to be on site, to help that relationship develop, and to get the moments where certain things would just happen. So this happened while I was there. We worked on a project for the Surrey firefighters, unrelated to the one I was on. They all showed up in uniform and presented yellow pencil with basically a certificate of gratitude for the work that we had done for them. It was because I was present and part of the Surrey team, right? We would have received this anyways, but it was just amazing to actually be there. They didn't know I was going to be in the office, but this worked out really well. Mental models. So we do things like card sorting, and this is a very traditional view of a card sort. We have maybe navigational items written out on cards, and we ask someone to sort them. How many of you have been part of a card sort or know what it is? Yeah, so about half of you. If we had about 100 items from their main navigation, let's say, and we get the users, their people to come in and actually sort through these and group them, and then there's two ways of doing it. They can group them, and then they name the category, or we give them categories and they put them into there. We begin to learn how they think about the content, how they think about where to find things. That is so important. We're asking real people, real questions on the content and site that they're going to use. And this has been something I've done for years, but the truth is, you get the people who are willing to come. You may offer some sort of reward, like a $50 gift certificate to a restaurant, or $50 period, things like that to get people to come in. But what we decided to do on this project was to go to people instead. We did card sorts on our iPads. We went to bus loops. We went to seniors' homes. We went to pools. We actually talked with people, got them to sort through the cards. And it was amazing the insights that we gained by going to and doing contextual user research. Talking to people and hearing them say, I have to wait 45 minutes for my bus. It's really important to me to find transit information on the City of Surrey's website. Or I'm just trying to buy a permit so that I can continue to do this building project in my backyard. Or I am a foreman in a construction company and I need this type of information. They were fun. We enjoyed it. We used optimal sort for this. And it was good. I still hope that something better comes out someday, so feel free to build that. But it broke down the information for us in such a way that we could use rich data, right? And we didn't have to wait for someone to come in to us. We went to the people that were actually using the services from the City of Surrey. One thing that I continue to discover when I work on discovery projects is that usernames are people. Right? It's such a simple concept, right? But we can get distracted by the technology, the business goals, and all the things, and we forget that everybody coming to the site is a person with real needs, just like you and me. So we set out, and this is the responsive process site that Andrew was talking about earlier, and it lays out, I like to talk about process. I don't like to talk about process, though. Oh, come on, you could at least laugh at the Canadian just once. Got the awkward laugh. But this is just a concept. In some ways it's an ideal. It's great. You can follow it. We do. I do. It's something that is very useful, but honestly, it is not perfect. It's just an overview. It's an outline. It's a suggestion. And I wish we talked more about our individual processes. So how many of you have been on a project with a client where they want the process, they want everything. They want it to have all the superpowers, right? I'm not necessarily a big superhero fan. Okay, but Superman has kind of got a lot of powers here. But the truth is, what we discovered with the City of Surrey and on almost every single project is it isn't the Superman version that you need. This is the process that they needed. That was the process that they wanted. Hopefully you got the Batman reference there. But where we need to adjust, we thought we were going to do things like page tables. Talk about this in responsive process. A voice and tone guideline, writing guidelines, static design comps. And as we went on, we realized they didn't need any of those things. In fact, they needed other things because they had some of those. And so rather than stick to what we had said we'd do, we talked. We collaborated and adjusted. We moved on. And what we did was we worked more on governance. We did lunch and learns. What the web is and what it can do for their content authors, actually talking to the people producing the content. At the time, they had almost 200 content authors for the single website. Right? They need to understand how it's going to work for them, how responsive content works, adaptive content. We actually ended up doing 4 separate presentations of the design because it needed to be communicated that way. Those things weren't in the plan, but we adjusted and they were needed. We dropped the things that we didn't and did the things that we needed. It's important to audit everything. Well, okay, it's not everything, but really the more you know about the content and the apps, the different things, the pieces that are moving on the site, the better informed your discovery process will be. You'll know more of the right questions. We did a little bit of this, not as a formal deliverable, but more ad hoc with the group, but empathy and experience mapping I think is really important. This is an example of that. From Adaptive Path, but really you're taking people through how the experience of a particular workflow or user would be on the site, right? And understanding, this is all the things they have to go through. That's what we were doing with that BC Transit project, to go and see what does a driver have to go through in order to even get their schedule, right? How can that be communicated through an intra or extranet? Audience profiles. A lot of people do personas, audience profiles, things like that. I like the profiles personally, but we're looking for trends in there, trying to understand their audience, and not. This happened really well I think it happened really well. It may be controversial, but on the Drupal redesign. How many of you remember designing by community? How Mark Bolton and his group opened it up to the community for feedback, and how horrific it seemed at first. Like, honestly, I remember watching that. I wasn't part of the Drupal community at the time. I had just connected with them and heard about this. I thought, you're going to die. Like, this is going to be the worst thing ever. But he explained to me that he was looking for trends. He was looking for how voices came together, and so we really are looking for those patterns. We're trying to get to know people here. This is 3 generations of Fisher here, myself, my daughter, and my dad. Right? So we develop these personas and audience profiles not so we can make up people. Don't do that. If you're just going to make up people, don't create these things. Base it on real data, real experience. One of the things that Ellen went around and did was lunch and learns, where she actually talked to the content authors and people, and they had an opportunity with also the City of Surrey's content person as well, together. This is not one of those, but I thought it was a great picture. So this is Alana, Lori, and Janine. 2 of them are yellow pencils, 2 of them from the City of Surrey. This is afterwards, but they talked to people that are actually producing the content. How important is that? Phone calls. You know what? This is actually a phone too. It's surprising to me how often people aren't willing to just pick up the phone. I do believe that it's appropriate when someone sends you an email to respond with an email. They send you a message on Twitter, respond on Twitter, that type of thing, because you're really responding in how they're comfortable. But every once in a while, you just need to talk, and we're not in the same place. It doesn't happen on a phone. It could happen through Skype, Google Hangout, doesn't matter. But we talked with people. We talked back and forth a lot on this project, and it helped us be successful. You need to be willing to adapt yourself in a discovery project. You can't go in and think, I know what to do, this is it, this is exactly how it's going to go. Because I guarantee you're going to experience failure then, and failure that you'll be hard to recover from. It's more important to experience being wrong and to adjust and adapt and to move forward. A true discovery process allows you to have these moments and then to move past into success. One of the things, just from a practical standpoint, that we did was in-browser wireframes. I very rarely open OmniGraffle or anything anymore. I do sketch. I use a pencil and paper. I love that. But I don't know how to communicate responsive design on paper. You know, I could draw out 60 different comps on paper or in OmniGraffle to try to communicate breakpoints and different things like that, but then there's all the moments between the breakpoints too. Right? I assumed that everybody in this room is familiar with responsive design. Is anybody not? Is anybody just too afraid to put up their hand? No, it's okay. Good. Yes. I wish I had a book for you or something, but I haven't written one. We did in-browser wireframes because we would experience so many more aha moments. These are the actual wireframes for the city of Surrey, or at least a version of them. I don't think this is the final version. This is James Bull worked on these with me. He did most of the work actually after the sketching. You know, so they are annotated, they're responsive, and there were so many aha moments, both from our team and from their team, when we're looking through this and saying, oh, this won't work if we do it this way. This will. And I think it's important as much as possible, if not all the time, to use real content. Content that is at very least representative of the real content that will be in the site, in the project. So that you can know, when is it going to break? Is this navigation pattern going to work? What will and what won't work? Discovery should inspire you. So, something that happened in the Yellow Pencil office during this project, but not just because of this project, but because of all the other ones we'd worked on when building style tiles, was this discussion. I don't know if that was the finger counting moment or not. It may have been, but where four or five of us just stopped what we were doing and started to say, how can we build a better style tile? We don't feel like we're being consistent. We're all doing our own thing. And this isn't necessarily it, but it inspired me. It inspired us, right? So these are, excuse the word press. These are interactive style tiles. A designer can just install this. There's a code version and there's also a WordPress version. Where they can create style tiles that are in the browser, right? Because one of the things we were experiencing was a disconnect when they would have like this static comp, and people always print things off. I don't know why they have to, but they do. They'll print off a web design, right? And of course the colors are all wrong, and it disconnects the user from what is really happening. So style tiles aren't about presenting layout. They're not about presenting necessarily even interaction patterns. They're about setting a design direction, really understanding how the brand could live online. And so this came out of discovery work. And I think that style tiles are a great way to discover if a brand is going to translate well online. So this one I know has been really controversial for some people. Right before South by Southwest, someone was talking about how you can't design in the browser again. I was like, bullshit, you can design in the browser, but you don't have to. Designing is not about painting pictures. Design is not art. It is not art. Designing is coming up with a response. It's not even solving a problem, to be honest. I don't think so, at least. You can argue with me on that later, or at the question time. But it's about coming up with a response where we say, like, that chair down there is a folding chair. It solves a sitting problem. This chair is not a folding chair. It solves the same problem, different response to the same problem, right? We are coming up with responses. We can do that on pencil and paper. We can do that by talking to each other. We can do that by designing in Photoshop. We can do that by designing in the browser. We make decisions. Some people have said that they're deciding in the browser. Okay, great. That's part of design thinking. We realized on the City of Surrey project, though, because of what we knew about the client, how it was being refreshed, how the style tiles had turned out, that we didn't actually need to produce a static comp. So we didn't, and we used the time elsewhere. We took what was their existing site at the time, which is this one here, and translated it into a refresh, because that was the purpose of the project. If we had stuck with a rigid, so this is still the old site here, the next screen here, this isn't the final site. This is one of the design comps that we were passing along, so to speak. But again, we got to have these aha moments of, now that the graphic design is in here, it changes things, the interactions. We did not need to do static design comps for this. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I actually think that a lot of times you still need to be designing in things like Photoshop or whatever you happen to use. But you don't have to. Discovery is about coming up with the right solution. This is kind of the heart of it, though. Discovery is about the why. Finding out the why a website exists in this case. I don't know how many of you have heard of Simon Sinek and his golden circle. I like to touch on this in most talks because I think it's so important. Has anybody heard of the golden circle, Simon Sinek? It was a 2009 TEDx talk, and it's really kind of expanded from there. And he talked about these 3 circles, concentric circles, the what, how, and why. And he focused in on the why. So let's talk about them all. The what. Everybody knows the what. What do? You're a developer. Developer. Okay, if I keep going, I feel like I'm going to get a bunch of developers. No. But every one of us can say what we do. They can tell us, this is what I do. They may not be able to articulate exactly the specifics of everything, but 100% of the people can tell you what you do. I can tell you that I'm a user experience designer. That's what my site is about. How gets a little fuzzier. So we're closing in on the circle, getting closer to the center. About 60% of people, according to Simon Sinek, know how they do what they do. So it gets a little fuzzier. You're not exactly sure about certain things, but you're going to figure that thing out. In fact, most of us have that moment where we just kind of bullshit our way through a meeting saying, yeah, I can totally do that. And we go home that night and go, oh shit, I better learn how to do that. But we use things like Foundation in responsive design, Twitter Bootstrap. Oh, and also this thing called Drupal. This is the first time I think I've talked about, had a Drupal slide in a presentation ever. We know generally how we do the things that we do, or we discover that easily. The why is really, really hard. Not many of us can articulate the why of what we're doing. Why does our company exist? Why am I a content strategist? Why are we building this website again? Simon Sinek uses 2 different computer companies as an example of this. And then you think about Apple computers and their history, and then maybe just a generic PC company. This isn't PC versus Mac competition here, though. But a PC company may say, you know what, I'm going to build a computer. That's what we're doing. We're building these computers to be sold. How are we doing? We've got a warehouse somewhere. We're going to source the parts and build it together. Why? Well, we want people to use our computers, and we want to make money. Right? That's a pretty typical business story, right? Apple computers said they were going to change the world. Did they? I don't know. But it is far more compelling for me to hear a company say, we want to think differently. We want to change the world. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to build these really integrated systems. We are going to source everything ourselves. It gets a little controlling after a while. And then the what? The what is, well, they're all over the place, right? The what is things like this, an iPhone, but they're things that transform what's happening around us. I am more willing to buy an Apple product, not just because it fits my workflow and it's been reliable for me, but because I was inspired by the company, because I felt like their founder knew the why. I didn't believe in Apple as much when Steve Jobs wasn't there, and I'm not so sure about it right now. It's interesting, and it's because I feel like pieces of the why are missing again. We need to look at the web and our discovery processes differently. At the Republic of Quality, we started to talk about how we need to have a connectedness. We need to experience empathy with the users that we work with. And we're a user experience company, so these terms just resonate deeply with us. We need to gain insight and then produce solutions. We can't we just turn down projects when it comes out there. It's just well, can you just design this for us? We don't want any research. It's no. The answer is no, we cannot. I may go broke because of that answer, but I believe in it. That's the why of why I'm doing this. So there's things like discovery workshops. All right, and zombies. Yeah, there's more. There's a little bit more. Oh, Sorry, technical difficulty there. How many of you watched The Walking Dead ever? Probably heard of it. It's pretty grotesque. I love zombies because they tells the same story over and over and over. Every zombie show tells the same story.
I'm more alone than I've ever been. Help me out with the shape I'm in. After the fires, before the flood, my sweet baby, I need fresh blood. My sweet baby, I need fresh blood.
Every presentation I do, someone comes up afterwards and says, "Why did you have to show that?" But we often confuse zombie movies and their purpose. I know maybe it just sounds like purpose of zombie movies, but they do. They tell the same story. Someone wakes up, there's an apocalypse, somehow they didn't get eaten by zombies, they can't find their family, they find their family, or they find a small group. They somehow survive, most of the people they're with die and become zombies, and maybe eventually the zombie apocalypse is even cured, or it just ends and we don't know what's going to happen. Right? But they tell this story differently over and over and over, and there's kind of these unique moments. And we focus too often on the zombies and the apocalypse and all that. That's not what zombie movies are about at all. This is the why of zombie movies. And it's not the cross. That just happens to be there, but it's the humanity. It's our response to this apocalypse. That's the real story in any zombie movie. It's not about eating brains or chopping off the head. It's saying, how do we remain human? That's the beautiful part of these grotesque shows, right? It's our response as a human. So we look at the web like this. At least now we kind of do. We maybe used to see just the browsers, and now we see devices, and we think about how to design for these devices, how to create content for these devices. Well, guess what? The web is not a bunch of gears. It's not a bunch of machines. The web is one person connecting to another person. It's multiple people connecting to multiple people. Do you know that Facebook has done more for the conflicts in the Middle East than 30 years of negotiations through the UN? And it's because people are seeing people. It's not to say that Facebook is solving that, but it's so interesting that these human connections we're making, and they don't just have to happen through Facebook. A discovery process is one, whoa, those animations went poorly, that takes us from a broken heart to a whole heart, right? Where we begin to see a wholehearted solution. We begin to understand the human connections, and we think about and plan for those. That is what we're building Drupal for. We're not building Drupal to be a successful business. Well, maybe you are, but we're building Drupal to help Drupal connect people to people. Otherwise, why are we going to do this? Are we trying to make it a better world or not? At the end of any process, especially a discovery one, when you really know each other, and it's kind of this amazing thing, or when you launch something, it's time to celebrate. So this is a celebration from that Surrey project. It launched. It was successful. It is meeting user needs. Yellow Pencil was able to produce this great product. But it wasn't about the technology in the end. It was actually about trying to connect people to people. Sure, technology is used in there. Sure, we had to think about interaction patterns. But it's about people. There's another, actually, don't worry about these links. You can just go to the Republic of Quality site and get some of these things. But there's an article that I wrote just about how we can be responsively responsive, right? That our processes should be things that take us towards a better world. I really believe in that. Here's a secret URL to a bunch of the resources I talked about, audience profiles, all these things. If you want to share, you can. It's not really secret, but it's just at my site, hellofisher.com. That's my personal site, /secret.php. It takes you to a Google Docs folder with a whole bunch of resources just shared. So I always get requests to share those resources afterwards. You can already access them if you just go through this URL. But feel free to send me an email or anything at any time. I am Hello Fisher. My company is Republic of Quality. We do experience design to help make a better world. Thank you very much. So unless I have my time wrong, I think there's time for questions.
Thanks so much for that. I have maybe an obnoxious logistic question. I've worked for a lot of Drupal shops. I've worked as a user experience person. I have to fight for budget. I work with programmers that are like, let's build features. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. So do you do a discovery process as a separate budget? Or do you just work on your own and do user experience and then hand that off to the agency? Like, how do you work with the developers and budget for that? Like when you were talking about the Surrey County or the Surrey City. When all of a sudden the deliverables change, do you just stop and say, okay, let's like revisit the budget and switch it up?
Well, this is the interesting case with Surrey. So, and each project is unique. With the Surrey project, there was a fixed budget, right? And fixed timeline, right? So real world constraints. Like I'm not trying to. I hope I don't present something that's like, hey, this will totally work for everyone, because they're real hard things. But we dropped the things we didn't have to do and saved budget there. So we only did the things that we were able to do within the constraints of the project. There are times where I've worked on projects within Yellow Pencil in the past where there's a discovery-only project that would have just now led to another municipality site that's going to happen. There are times where discovery is just not enough. Any discovery is better than none. So I really do believe a project is only lucky if it's successful at the end and you don't do discovery. So there's real ROI to this. Where you can attach that. That's the easiest way from my perspective to sell it. Right now, most of what I do is discovery work, right? And whether that's part of working with another agency or a standalone project where I hand it off, yeah, it's selling essentially the business value of that. I understand your position, though. It sometimes can be hard when features are seen as the thing.
Yeah, totally. Thanks.
Hello. I was just wondering if you mentioned Foundation and some other frameworks. I was wondering if you find you use frameworks like Foundation in the final production build, or is it more of a prototyping tool, or both?
Foundation in the final build, no, that hasn't really happened. I would love to see whatever code was used in wireframes become final production code and that just be carried on. In the design comps you're seeing, though, that was production ready code, right? And starting to be tested. Part of it is that on that project and many, we were using a small screen first approach. And at the time, Foundation was not that, and we would have to hack it together, and it just didn't fit the budget. So not really. I haven't worked on a project where Foundation or Twitter Bootstrap are what we actually use for production code.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. If not, I'm happy to let you go early. And I believe there are surveys. I'd really love to know. I know this was a very different type of presentation. I would love to get feedback on this, whether that's through the official DrupalCon survey, which would be excellent. I know that will help them and me. Or whether you just want to send me an angry email or a happy message on Twitter. I'll just delete the email then. So. No, I won't. Please give me feedback. And thanks again. Look forward to more parties at DrupalCons.